Let's now catch up with the latest in the advisory and just getting across that at the moment. We're going to take a look at Treasury having released a draft report there on delivering better financial outcomes and on reforms there as such, confirming that intra-fund advice topics and circumstances, reforms relating to disclosure requirements. Adrian Gervasoni joining us now from Industry Fund Services. Adrian, welcome to AusBiz. Thanks for joining us. For those unfamiliar with this and that terminology, just explain to us what, when we're talking about delivering better financial outcomes, what are government and Treasury been looking at?
Yeah, sure. I mean, obviously, these reforms go back a few years now. Michelle Levy led a review, quality of advice review, with the industry crying out for help in terms of regulatory reform. As you may well know, the cost of providing advice puts it out of reach of most Australians. So, it's something that a shared mission across the industry, regardless of whether we're talking in superannuation funds or retail advice businesses, is it's in all our interests to make advice more accessible. Commercially, it makes advice businesses more attractive. And obviously for the consumers that we're here to serve, we want to serve a much greater number than those that can currently afford to get advice. So yeah, that's kind of the background of why it is these reforms are so necessary. And in terms of the work that Treasury has been doing over the last 12 to 18 months, it's taking that quality of advice review, and then Stephen Jones's response to that with this government was the delivering better financial outcomes, and they took a number of those recommendations that the quality of advice review put forward and broke them into tranches. And we saw tranche one focused on some of the components around fee disclosure and the like. And the thing that's had the industry most excited, it has been this focus on the new class of advisor. So this introduction of I guess another tier of advisor that's focused on the simple end of the advice spectrum, and some relief around best interest duty, and also confirming what trustees can and can't provide advice on, and what of that advice can they include as intra-fund or effectively cross-subsidise the cost of across a membership. So what we saw last Friday was, as you said, I guess some additional clarity in terms of draft legislation and explanatory guidance on what topics a super fund can provide advice on, which a member would need to pay for versus that in which would be called classed as intra-fund. We see that there's probably more a clarification rather than a significant change, in that a number of funds will already provide members with really basic retirement support classified as intra-fund advice. But for some funds that have been a little bit uncertain of the rules and may not have fully committed to that sort of light touch retirement advice, this is welcome, I guess, the clarity for them. Obviously, we need all of this to be legislated, and there'll be an election in between. So whoever the government is of the day, we seem to have, pleasingly, strong support from both sides that these reforms will pass in one way or another. We just hope that it's not too long a delay, given the real and meaningful impact it can have on consumers.
Adrian, can I just pick you up on your reference there to the new type of advisor, if you like, that has been created? What are the advantages there potentially for clients, and perhaps also the limitations?
Yeah, this has probably been one of the more controversial aspects of the DBFO reforms. And I think whilst we accept that, there's not enough people making their way into the advice profession, there's very few that pick a financial planning degree, so that the entry pathway has been pretty tough. And we welcome also some recent announcements around a broader pathway into advice, with some tinkering that's happened with which degrees qualify you to become a planner or not. Up until very recently, it's been very, very tight entry pathway. But we need more people to want to become advisors. because at the moment, we've seen the industry shrink from circa 30,000 down well under 14,000 now, and that puts pressures on wages, and it has forced advice businesses to look up the wealth spectrum in terms of the consumers that they serve. But the new class of advisor would, obviously working for industry funds, it would enable super funds to provide advice to members with simple needs via a channel that's not a full financial planner. And that, I guess, the bits that the industry has struggled with is what's the subject matter in the detail that they can cover off on. What is complex versus simple is not simple in itself to define. And that's been, I think, the challenge that Treasury has had is in consulting the industry so widely as they have done, is to try and get consensus can be kind of difficult at times. But that opportunity to have a training ground for full advisors, we see this as being a step to becoming a fully fledged financial planner. But it bridges a gap between frontline service staff that might have a general advice license today and the degree plus professional year that's required to become a full financial planner.
And I guess an example of that complexity is what we've seen in super, with particularly revolving around statements of advice. They can be weighty documents, perhaps overwhelm some super members there, but also from an advice point of view, I guess, just in terms of record keeping, it's onerous as well.
Yeah, and I mean, we've had a number of goes at trying to improve the statement of advice by way of ASIC guidance and the like. And I think with any of these reforms, the same goes, and that is we can't expect government and Treasury to design services and artifacts on behalf of industry. That's got to be our job. What we need is a regulatory platform that encourages and enables good design to take place. I think in financial planning and in financial services, there's lots of terminology that we become very comfortable using: intra-fund advice, comprehensive advice, and the like. These are not terms that we should be using with consumers. We should just be offering help, and the form at which it takes, that's our job to make that strike a good balance between consumer protections and being able to do it affordably at scale. But I think we've had a tendency at times to use regulatory constructs as a proxy for service design. And likewise with the statement of advice, I think if you kind of look at it objectively and say, well, what's the subject matter? What's the form of service I'm providing? And therefore, what's the artifact a consumer needs to feel confident with the decision we're asking them to make? That should look very different depending on whether I'm providing self-managed super fund and complex portfolio management advice versus I'm helping you pick between conservative, balanced, or growth in your industry fund. The artifact we give someone at the moment is the same template, which is ridiculous. What we need to do is look at the service being provided, make sure that's being done well, and the artifacts in whatever form they take, right sized to the service being provided.